Welcome to the Gaslight Effect Podcast. I'm Robin Stern, co-founder and associate director of the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence and author of the best-selling book, The Gaslight Effect. I'm an educator and a psychoanalyst, but first and foremost, I'm a wife, a mother, a sister, aunt, and healer. And just like many of you, I was a victim of gaslighting. Please join me for each episode as I interview fascinating guests and explore the concept of gaslighting. You'll learn what it truly means to be gaslighted, how it feels, how to recognize it, and how to understand it, and ultimately, how to get out of it. Before we begin, I want you to know that talking about gaslighting can bring up challenging and painful emotions. Give yourself permission to feel them. Some of you may want to go more deeply with your emotions, while some of you may hold them more lightly. No matter what you're feeling, know that your emotions are a guide to your inner life. Your emotions are sacred and uniquely you. Respect and embrace them, for they have information to give you. If you want to listen to other episodes of the Gaslight Effect podcast, you can find them at robinstern.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you for being here with me. Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Gaslight Effect podcast. I'm really thrilled today to have Irene with me. Irene and I met recently at a party where you told your story, as I hope you will do today. And I was just fascinated to know that you're a storyteller, a singer, a songwriter, and a singer, an artist, and also were a mechanical engineer. And you're in love. And you tell your story in a way that is empowering and captivating and beautiful and emotional. And so I want all of my listeners to hear all about you. So I'd like you to start wherever you want and tell us who you are, Irene, and why you said yes to being on the Gaslight Effect podcast.
Thank you very much, Robin. I love your work. I think it's much needed. And Mark Brackett, who was throwing this party where we met, it's wonderful to start aligning with people in my life that are studying the very things that I was finding on my own as an artist and was not aware of the studies and the educational aspects that are out there for people. Like, more people should be listening to this great work that you guys are doing. So thank you for that. And I would say that I would probably start in my childhood. I think that a lot of times I go on podcasts and people are so interested about my life from the religious trauma aspect. I was raised in a very orthodox, very strict Mormon household. And so a lot of people like to start there. But for me, it was before the religious trauma really started happening. It's important to talk about the fact that my parents were so emotionally unaware or able to help me or my siblings with our self-awareness and our emotional awareness growing up. And that's the foundation that my life was built on. And a lot of my emotional awareness was outsourced to a third party. My parents didn't quite know how to do it, and so they let the religion itself raise us. And I had no concept of self or of identity really growing up.
Can you say more about that the religion raised you? It's really quite an intense phrase.
Yeah. From a very young age, if I had feelings or emotions towards a certain subject, I would not search or ponder those on my own. Immediately, I would go to the scripture. I was very studious as a child. I was reading books well beyond my grade level.
Mm.
And so I read a lot, but the sources from which I was reading were my, the Book of Mormon or talks from the prophets or the apostles of the Mormon church. And like those were my emotional guides. And unfortunately, especially a lot of the old, um, more standard doctrine from Joseph Smith or Brigham Young or the earlier prophets are very much rooted in shame and guilt, as many religious structures are. And so being a child and referencing these documents as a even greater guidance than what my parents would give me. My parents could tell me something as I was, growing up, maybe in fourth grade into middle school.
Mhm.
My parents could give me advice on something, but if it didn't match what I was reading in these religious documents, I trusted the church and the teachings of the church more so than I even trusted my own parents. And that's what I mean by the outsourcing, right? Like as a child, I only trusted my parents as far as they were obedient to the true parent and teacher of my childhood, which was this deep doctrine of Mormonism that I became obsessed with.
So, in this basically handing over your teaching to religion, how did that feel to you? I mean, was there a moment where you realized, well, I'm not getting it from them, but I am getting it from here, or was it more seamless than that? That was simply what you were reading and living by, and so your parents were. If you say you didn't believe them as deeply as you did the doctrine, the spirit, the text that you were reading, uh, did you are you aware that you made that decision?
No, no, I think I am now, but as a child, it was more so I realized that I received love and attention when I was quoting scripture to my parents or repeating back the doctrines that I had learned.
Hmm.
One of my earliest memories is gardening with my mom, and I repeated back to her some scripture about how faith is like a little seed, and if you plant it, it will grow and things. And my mom just gushing over, "Oh, you're so smart and intelligent. Yes, that's exactly what we teach." You're like, um, or another time, my mother, there was some movie that was playing, and there was something that, made the spirit leave the room or something. And I ran out, and my mom came and got me and told me something to the effect of, "You're so spiritual. You have such a high spiritual awareness compared to your siblings. I'm so proud of you." Like, and moments like that are what started to solidify in my mind, oh, my mom is proud of me, or my dad loves me when I follow these teachings. And so I became so obsessed with that because I was one of five siblings, right? I mean, it's hard to give that much attention to all of these kids. I think we were, at least for a while, it was like 8, 6, 4, 2. I mean,
And
all
where were you in that lineup?
I was second oldest. But I think that I quickly tried to become this almost third parent in the home, like the regulator, the peacemaker. And I did that because, I mean, truly as a child, it was like, I mean, my ego was also kind of insane growing up because I thought, oh, as I am righteous with all these teachings, I can help facilitate peace in the home. And it's kind of my job to make sure that my mom is happy or that my dad isn't. My dad was very loud, very narcissistic. And that's a whole separate topic from the church itself. But my father definitely used the patriarchal system to his advantage in kind of ruling the home. And but my dad also, and I'm just now kind of discovering these things. I had severe blocks on my childhood memory for years, like had almost zero recollection of my childhood. And it's just now starting to come back. And so a lot of these things that we'll be talking about are actually new for me as I'm discovering things about myself.
Mhm.
But because I used to just think I hated my dad. I hated the way that he treated my mom. I would often defend my mom, which is actually one of the things you write in your book. Um, just put it here for everyone in case this is a clip. The gaslight effect. One of the things that you wrote in your list is that when a child has to start defending their parent, that's when you know that gaslighting could be present because even a child sees that the way that someone is manipulating their partner isn't right. And so that was much of my childhood, yelling and screaming and just doing anything I could to try to bring peace. And to me, if I was righteous, if I was digging into the emotional regulator of our home, which was the church, then I was doing my part to keep my parents happy. But I grew up being gaslit as a child. I grew up watching my father gaslight my mother.
What did that sound like when you were being gaslighted?
Um, I think a lot of it had to do with the guilt and shame of if I did a normal childhood thing. I was just recounting this memory to my husband a couple days ago, and I asked him, "Is this normal? I have this childhood memory. Is it normal?" When I was being potty trained, and if I accidentally wet the bed or something, like we would be sprayed down with cold water as punishment because we were, it was a bad thing to do. And I felt so much guilt and shame for, wetting the bed. I mean, later on, other um, childhood things, when I first started becoming sexually aware at 13, that, there's changes in my body and I got caught talking to a boy. And instead of being talked about, these are natural feelings and this is what I had no awareness of like sex really or sexuality, and no one taught me these things. And instead, I was punished and shut in a garage, and I got grounded for like a whole summer. Um, and I couldn't talk to my friends, and like love was withheld from me. And so those were gaslighting moments to me where my reality is that these natural things are happening to me as a child. I'm young, I'm wetting the bed, or I'm in middle school, I'm starting to emotionally and sexually change. But instead of being greeted with the reality of you're a normal kid and let me help you and let me parent you through these things, it was this is not okay. This is not normal. You should be ashamed. You should be guilty. And love was cut off from me.
Yeah, so I think that maybe the fourth time, maybe the fifth, that you said guilt and shame, and in this recording, and I wonder, when you look back, are those the predominant feelings that you had during your childhood?
Oh yes, it ruled my childhood.
What did you do with it?
I punished myself. Um, and I think that that's where the gaslighting of myself started. It was repeated to me enough times by my parents. So there's layers to it, right? In my inner circle,
Yeah.
the the guilt or shame coming from my parents. But then even outside of them was the community that was raising me in the church. And there's also a lot of guilt and shame baked into the obedience and the structure there. So, but then eventually it just became so natural for me to do it to myself. I remember being, oh God, I couldn't have been out of middle school at the time, but I thought that I had sinned or done something and laying outside in the rain thinking if I get sick, I deserve it. I should be punished. I became obsessed with the idea of godly sorrow and repentance and would physically abuse myself. I would, take myself to the gym and do sprints until I puked, just trying to physically show God how sorry I was. Um,
Do you remember what you were sorry for?
yeah, no, I think that some boy texted me something. that he was attracted to me or liked something, and I answered back and was like flirtatious. Um,
So no celebration of what's normal and natural in development
no, no.
of some positive feeling that you might have had towards the opposite sex.
hmm Oh, yeah, and I mean, sexual shame is, I think, common in many religions, but I also was sexually abused as a child in the church, and that that had a lot to do with the confusion of my own feelings, and especially as I became older and more aware of what was going on, and yet constantly submitted to um, interviews with bishop um, members where I would have to answer questions about my sexuality, and they would ask me questions that like I didn't even know what they were asking.
Why were you interviewed? I mean, why would they do that?
All right, so when you're 8 years old, you start doing interviews so that you can be baptized, and then there's worthiness interviews that you have to go through. And this idea that it is a worthiness interview. So, according to your answers, you are worthy or unworthy to participate in things like going to the Mormon temple, for example. And sexual purity is one of those. And sometimes you have bishopric or clergymen that will absolutely dig for answers on your sexuality, which when I was 13, what the episode where I ended up getting shut in a garage for a summer basically and had love withheld from me from my parents, they also thought that they should take me to see the bishop and have me sit in an office with him and answer, all these questions. And I remember he kept asking me these questions that I didn't understand how to answer because I didn't know that a woman could orgasm. No one taught me that. I didn't even know what that was. And he kept asking me these questions. And I was just like, this is so strange. Why? And he kept wording it differently without saying the word orgasm.
But how does this connect, even looking back now, how does it connect to your worthiness? Were you supposed to be admitting either I do or I don't? I mean, I don't understand.
Oh, okay. Yes. So the answers I should have been sexually pure and have, you know, never, uh, well,
Played with yourself, touch
yeah,
yourself.
no, yeah, you can't touch yourself. You can't let other people touch you. You can't let other people talk about touching you or any of these things. Um, and so, but all I felt while I was in there was that I was so unworthy. My parents had put me in this room because I was a bad kid and I was unworthy to go to the temple. Or sometimes when you quote unquote mess up or sin, especially with sexuality in the Mormon church, you have certain rights taken away from you. Like you can't take the sacrament on Sundays, the bread and the water that they pass around. And it's almost like this scarlet letter that you wear because everyone else in the community sees that you're not allowed to take it. And then it's another form of guilt and shame as you make your way through a repentance process. And so, but this was the culture kind of that I grew up in, and it seemed normal to me. I had no construct of what a childlike, a childhood without guilt and shame looked like.
Or a childhood without having to prove yourself constantly and actually living against what's natural and just comes with development.
Yeah.
And so I know that we could go through your growing up years in exquisite detail, and I hope we will continue to do that over time in different ways. But I would love to know, and I'm sure my listeners and our listeners today would love to know, when did you start to wake up? Like when did you start to think, this is not okay, or maybe it's not okay, or that's not who I am. I'm not a bad person, rather than buying into that The idea that because you were thinking about sex, you were bad. You were not.
Mhm.
When did that start to change?
Yeah, I think that it probably started to change, not because I realized that something was wrong, but my body literally was almost shutting down from the stress of all of it. When I was 19 and I served my Mormon mission, at that point I was very soldier like. Uh, I had no regard for my own emotional or physical well-being other than I was a tool and an instrument
Hmm.
to preach the gospel to everyone. And I was serving in Central America.
Hmm.
And on my mission is when I completely lost myself. I lost the ability to have any inkling of an identity. And my body at the end literally started to shut down, and I emotionally could not feel anything. And I knew that something was wrong because there I was in a country where, I'm seeing horrendous things and poverty and women and children um and I couldn't even feel emotion for the things that I was seeing or a part of. And when I came home from my Mormon mission, I think is when I I realized something was very, very wrong. And I didn't understand the depth of a lifetime of living in guilt, shame, gaslighting.
Hmm.
But it just felt like I can't go on living like this. Whatever. I didn't know what was wrong yet, but my body knew that something was wrong.
And so, what did you do to find out?
Well, that is cosmic universal timing of when I met my now husband, who was at the time studying to get his doctorate in philosophy of ecology. And he was working as an ecologist at a forest preserve where I got a summer job before I went back out to Utah. I was in the Midwest. That's where my family is from. And I started working with him. And long story short, I tried to convert him. It was kind of like my last go of, you know what? Like, here's this handsome man who seems very smart. It would be a very good challenge to try to convert him. Um, and he ended up asking all the right questions. And I was just broken enough that I was willing to entertain the questions. And 8 months later, I dropped out of Brigham Young University, moved to Arizona with a non-Mormon aunt, and the estrangement from my family started. I mean, that's probably where I realized, yeah, that's the first time I heard the term gaslighting. And my now husband introduced that term to me, and I became obsessed with it because my family was literally calling me and telling me that I was crazy. You're crazy, you're insane. Don't you feel this darkness inside of you? Because I was leaving the church or at least stepping back from it.
So, you moved through that period that obviously required a lot of vulnerability and courage and uh, exploration with your husband, with your now husband, who I've had the privilege to meet, and he is wonderful and handsome, and you are a beautiful couple. But during that period, what were the things that he said that helped you move forward? Because it's often someone else's voice, someone you can trust, or somebody where you have that, I know he's right. I know it. Even though you knew it all along, you wouldn't let yourself know it.
Yeah, I think that a lot of it is just patience. And he kept saying, ask why. Keep asking why. And I mean, we would often, like every night, be on the phone for hours because not only was I working through the detrimental gaslighting of my own family telling me that I was insane and I was crazy, but I was working through basic things like it would take me 2 hours to work through, okay, maybe Joseph Smith wasn't a prophet. Maybe Mormonism isn't the one truth. Maybe I can start thinking outside of this. And then I call my husband the ecologist on my socials. So if I reference that, I need the audience to know. So the ecologist would say, yes, and if Joseph Smith isn't a prophet, then that would mean, and I would be like, oh my God, then that would mean that my whole world and nothing is true, and I have to start, and I would like start crying.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would go back to the beginning. And my poor husband, I mean, the patience of this man, he would say, okay, yeah. So, but remember where you were. Like, let's start again. If you were, and so I think that the key was his patience in letting me repeat. Because when you've been taught something in a linear fashion that's been drilled into you, whether it's in a relationship or a religion or something, it takes repeated efforts to try to break that cycle or that line of thought. And so for him, I think it was the repeatedly saying, let's start at the beginning, ask why again, and also his wherewithal to say, you have to work through this yourself. I can't tell you what to do. If I tell you what to do, then I'm no better than, you know, where you're coming from. You have to figure this out yourself. Um, yeah, those were all very important things that allowed me to start building my own thought structure.
And when he did ask you to do it yourself, uh, how did you respond to that invitation? I mean, was it a scary thing or was it a freeing thing? Do you remember?
Uh, it was terrifying. No one had ever asked me to think for myself before, which is crazy. But I was 21 years old and for the first time in my life had an invitation to develop my own thought structures. And I think that simply his belief in me, his belief that I was smart enough to do that, um, was exhilarating and kept me coming back. Because it was kind of addicting to have someone say for the first time in my life, I believe in you and you're smart enough to do this. And like, um,
And give you the permission to feel.
yes, exactly. Another very important subject. Because I had no idea how to even describe the implosion of thoughts in my mind. And unless you have been through something where all foundation and structure of who you are and the way that your brain processes things is like completely leveled, it's extremely slow going to rebuild all of that. Um, it was extremely painful, but at the same time, it was freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's one of my songs is freedom was pain.
Well, that's the perfect segue because for my question to you, how is your creative process um, a support or a leader for you in freeing yourself?
It's been life-saving. I actually started writing music probably at the age of 22. The ecologist bought me my first guitar. And he said, you're really talented, like you're good at singing. You should do this. And he gave me a guitar. And songwriting became a life-saving endeavor because I had so many thoughts and emotions swirling in my mind, but I had no labels for them. That's one thing I love that you and Mark talk about is the idea of labeling different emotions. I I was not privy to that when I was young. And so,
Only guilt and shame.
yes, yes. So songwriting was suddenly the freedom to grab at these emotions and take hundreds of thoughts and distill it into two verses. And it brought such clarity to my mind that I had never experienced before.
Did you know that you were a poet? Did you know that you were so lyrical and um, that this was a gift that you needed to share, or was that also part of your awakening that came at that point?
Truly, I think part of an awakening. I
Yeah.
mean, like I said, as a kid, I loved to read. Reading was my escape, up until I was old enough where I stopped reading fiction or normal kid books. I just solely dedicated myself to reading the canon scripture of in Mormonism. But um, yeah, I always loved poetry. I loved literature, but I had never truly tried to express myself through prose or music. So it was a beautiful discovery, really.
What was your first song?
Um, the first song technically would have been High Water, which is what I named my first album after. And that one just delves into the feelings of uh, a relationship and being pushed and pulled by these tides as I was still kind of trying to make amends with my family. And it was this great gravitational force to want to almost go back and submit myself to these feelings of guilt and shame that I was the one that messed up my family. I was responsible for this break.
Did you miss them, or was it the pull of um, the gaslighting?
Great question, Robin. No, I didn't really miss them.
Mm,
It was the addiction to the feelings of my childhood uh, that I was supposed to be this peacemaker, this person that made the family structure happy. But from a very early age in my childhood, I disconnected from my family.
mhm,
I would say probably around the time I got to middle school, the the there was some part of my inner child that recognized I'm not really emotionally safe in this home, and I can I can emotionally manipulate my siblings and everyone so that we kind of have peace and regulation in the home to some extent, but I myself checked out. Uh, this is a discovery I've been making over the last couple months, but it it wasn't actually that hard to leave my family because I was emotionally disconnected from them for such a long period of time
mhm,
that I didn't miss my family. I was
mhm.
grateful to be separated from my family. But in a way, yeah, I missed that addictive pull of the gaslighting.
Yeah. If your siblings were watching this recording, or if your siblings, have your siblings heard you and heard your music, or is that like off limits for them? And what do they say? And do you have a relationship with them now?
I have no idea, honestly, if they're listening. Uh, I know that some of them immediately blocked me on social media, and I have not spoken with them in years.
Mm.
Um,
And your
but
parents?
no, I think there's been total estrangement for at least 5, maybe 6 years now.
Mm.
And I don't even know if they know that I've changed my name. 'Cause I wasn't born with the name Irene. Uh, I don't know what they would say, but I I put such passion into my work because it's important for me that I leave almost a breadcrumb trail that if they were to wake up one day and say, I wonder how she got to where she is, that they could follow my journey and recognize and understand the work that it's taken for me to get here, and that they're welcome to follow along in that journey.
I think that's incredibly generous and loving of you. And I think and loving of yourself also in your separation and your continuing your work and having left them. And one of the things that I hear a lot in my practice from people who have difficulty leaving families or leaving their places of origin is that guilt, and is it ever okay to reject or to be estranged from your parents? Is it ever okay to give up your mom or your dad? And it is so okay. It is so okay when you can't be you and you can't live your life and you can't fulfill your destiny, if you will, by being connected to people who are gaslighting you and abusing you. So, I mean, I think just appreciating that about how profoundly courageous you were in saying yes to yourself and to the ecologist so many years ago so that you could find your voice and be free and then make forge a career out of telling your story and opening minds and hearts of other people going through something similar. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, no, thank you, Robin. It's it is my deepest and greatest honor to find work in being authentic and inviting others to authentically pursue themselves. I think it's so lost in this day and age of social media where perfection is often what is presented to people on the internet. And that's how Irene's entropy started. I mean, entropy is nothing more than a law in physics that says that this chaos and disorder of energy will expand with time and you can't stop it.
How did you get your name?
Irene was a name that was given to me in the Mormon temple at the age of 19.
Mm-hmm.
It was a token that I was to take with me to the threshold of heaven's door when I died. And speaking the name was a part of the process that would allow me to pass into heaven. And it was supposed to be kept a secret my entire life. And the idea of Irene's entropy is that when I first let my former identity crumble, Irene sat in the rubble with everything else. I was never going to touch that name again. But as I started songwriting, the idea of writing about the identity crumble from the perspective of this secret part of my identity, that name meant so much to me. And resurrecting the idea that a name that represented my subservience and my obedience and staying quiet and allowing it to become the voice that spoke loudly to the world about who I was and who I was becoming, that empowered me. And Irene's entropy became the navigation of all of the chaotic thoughts going on in my world. And as I started my career going into engineering and songwriting and balancing building a brand.
Engineering and songwriting, how are they connected?
Um, I think they are. Engineering at its core is nothing more than coming up with different perspectives of how to build something. And so much of our common core math and the way we teach things now is, you're going to go into school and you're going to come out an engineer, and this is your thought process and how you think. But the best engineers are creative because there are multiple ways that you could build a building or a ship or whatever it is. Um, but engineering is all about coming up with the best way to build something with the amount of time you have and the materials you have and the money you have. So to me, I took the best parts of engineering and instead infused it with my creativity. I think another special part of going into engineering is that all the other students in my class were just there to learn the math and get the hell out, you know?
Mhm.
But I was at a period of life where my whole world had crumbled and I was rebuilding my world. And so I had such a different perspective on the things I was learning. And I was connecting my philosophy class or my history class or, my ethics class to what I was learning in engineering and piecing all the things together and making these connections that aren't generally taught in school,
Well,
but they
you
all,
were rebuilding and building.
yeah, yeah. And it all just kind of came together in this blending of education and um, the reformation of my mind. And it just, yeah, I wrote most of my songs in the back of my engineering notebooks while I was in class.
Love that. That's
Not gonna
so
lie.
fantastic. So fantastic. So, what made you, or what led you to want to take your story and your songwriting and your singing on the road and reach out to other people?
When it started really taking root in the internet and I started going viral for some of my videos, the hundreds of at this point it's probably thousands of messages that I got of people saying, I can't tell you how much I needed this. I'm going through A, B, or C. This is my story. And watching you be brave enough to talk about your own, it's making a difference for me. And I mean, at this point, I've been at it long enough now where, you know, there have been young women that have messaged me and said, I'm going back to school because of you. I'm going to get my degree because of you. I'm getting a divorce because of you. And as I started doing these concerts live in different cities, I remember I had a woman come up to me with these two women, and one said, I don't know who you are. This is my best friend. She took me to your concert tonight and said, I'm taking you here. You have to listen to Irene. You have to listen to this story. And then as soon as they sat down in the chair, she said, you're here tonight because I need to tell you that after 20 years, like I finally decided I'm going to divorce my husband. And later, like after the show, in between tears, she said, I only had the courage to tell my best friend this and admit this out loud in the presence of, what your show was, because so much of my show is me just bearing this vulnerability of people watching, like me describing the identity collapse and building up from that.
Well, and taking that emotional journey with you. I mean,
Hmm.
I've been there. I've taken that journey with you. It's very powerful and beautiful and compelling. And so, what a gift you give to people who are fortunate enough to be with you in person, but also to watch you on the internet and watch you hear your voice and hear your songs and your words. When did you decide to write your story, your song about gaslighting?
Yeah. Um, that that was very early on. I think I wrote that song, like many of my songs. I write maybe a year or two before I actually realize what I was trying to sort through in my mind. Music is often this almost prophetic um, explanation of things that I have not even discovered until I've worked through them years later. So I wrote Gaslight Me, I don't even know, like probably 5 years ago, 5 or 6 years, when I was going through the really big estrangement from my family. And if you watch the music video, it starts after I've gone through Identity, which is this song where I realize that my perfect world is not so perfect. These
Mhm.
pills I've been taking every morning are not actually helping me. and they're warping my view of reality. And when I discover this, I run away from home. I find this door, and I walk through it, and it transports me to a new realm that we filmed out in the desert. And that's Freedom Was Pain, and it's this beautiful visual of what it's like to be alone inside of your own mind in this wilderness that you're exploring for the first time. And after that exploration in the wilderness, it leads me to the door again. And when I walk through this time, I'm inside of this white room, which to me was this representation of walking inside to my own mind. And suddenly, for the first time, I'm approached by these demons that are residents in my mind. They live rent free in my mind. Um, and at the time when I wrote the song, I didn't really know what all the demons were. I pictured them as, my family or my sexual abuser or as the church, all of these things. And you see in the video, the beginning lyrics are, set the traps up myself, laid red tape like hell to make sure that I was safe. Didn't know I would find breaking free the first time, that my only jailer was me. Got to break down my walls to be free. And so the idea that I laid this red tape in my own mind, I set up these traps for myself. I think it was my first recognition that I had been taught gaslighting from my parents or from the church, but I myself became a master manipulator of my own mind. And I let myself entrap me in this cage and these walls of my own mind. And what I love so much about that music video now is I look back and I was not as well vocally trained when I recorded it. And like you can hear like the stress in my voice as I'm screaming, go on, gaslight me, let me be. And the trying to break through these walls, because you see there's a light coming through the wall at one point, and it's like this this light, this enlightenment. And I'm so curious as to what that light really is. And my demons keep pulling me back from this wall, not letting me explore this enlightenment. And it it's such a trial and a chore and work, to break free those first couple of times when you're really punching through a wall and you're trying to break through that gaslighting. Um,
And the image is such truth,
mm,
such truth of experience. Yeah.
yeah, I'm interested. I'm assuming you've watched it. I've never actually asked you if you've watched it, but
Well, and people will watch it listening to the background, listening to your story.
yes, I
So
hope so.
it's fantastic. And I think when I first wrote Gaslight Effect, uh, I didn't realize how the kind of responses that I would get, which are likely the responses you have gotten, like, wow, were you in my living room? Did you hear our conversations? How did you know?
Yeah.
And naming something, whether it's for other people, for yourself, is just so powerful. So powerful. And then to add the music, the lyrics, the images, it's very powerful. I can't wait for people to see it. I'm so appreciative that you said yes to using pieces of it, showing pieces of it in this recording. So as we wrap up, which sadly we have to do for this time, I have a couple of questions. One is, what questions are you still living with?
I think I live with the questions of what parts of my past still dictate how I live my present. Really, really digging and sinking my teeth into that, because so much of the things that we hate from our past, we ignore. And we don't want to let them have anything to do with our present or our future. But it is often sitting down with those parts of us, and only by understanding them that we can truly make change. And so I question the way that my mother and father raised me. As I said, I'm just now having these childhood memories come back to me, and looking at what parts of the way I emotionally handle myself under moments of stress are like my mother or my father, or other figures from my childhood. And how can I truly stop some of the cycles from my childhood and generationally make change by choosing to change? Um, so that's a big one.
That's a big one.
I realize that's kind of a vague answer, but it's been on my mind quite a bit, and I've started songwriting, um, and penning down different lyrics that have to do with that.
Didn't feel vague. It felt not at all. It's like work. It's your next work or your current work. It's your current work. And what I was going to say before you said that you were penning down your story, I was going to ask, when are you going to start writing about it?
Yeah, I'm hopeful to have a large portion of these songs written by the time I have a showcase I'm doing in New York in November. I don't know when
Yay,
this
I know.
podcast
Yes, you did tell me. Yes,
will be
excited.
released,
Yeah.
but it's a very important part of the chapter that I I honestly have not really sat with. I was so focused on the religious trauma of my childhood that I missed so much of the memories that were gone of what happened before religious trauma sank in, because those are the real foundational parts of how I was building my understanding of myself and my emotions.
And relationships.
Yeah. Yep. And so tackling that chapter, I think, is almost a completion of the storyline, of what I was missing. So I'm really excited to kind of dig in and sit with that over the next month or so, as I really hone in on building this story, because I'm taking this show on the road and I'm meeting my followers and my community that I've built of, I call them door walkers, walking through their own doors, like in my music videos.
I love that you're doing that. I love that you're taking your show on the road, and people need to hear your music and listen to your story and experience their own through listening to you as well. And I look forward to projects that we're going to do together as well, taking your show on the road and offering moments for people to really explore on their own in our company while they're doing that. So tell us a little bit about what you're looking forward to in your future, like just aside from this uh, current exploration. What else are you looking forward to?
I am looking forward to, I mean, honestly, more than anything, I'm looking forward to bringing this to people live, because it's the internet is so hard. Like, I don't have time to answer all of the messages that come in, and typing something to someone just is not the same as looking them in the eye and witnessing them and having them have this real connection. I I'm so excited to be out there and meeting the people that have been supporting me and watching my work and following along. And I'm really excited for the completion of a couple of the next music videos that will be released, that follows my story as I first fight these demons and then come to peace with them. Uh, I feel like closing that chapter and releasing that art will be uh, a big moment for me.
And for all of your listeners and followers, yes, it will be. So I can't thank you enough for spending your time with me. I so enjoy you and admire your courage and vulnerability and just share what you're willing to share with the world and the gift you keep giving. Where can people find you, Irene?
They can find me on social media at irenes.entropy. They can go to my website, irenesentropy.com. And you can go to YouTube and look for the playlist that has all of my music videos that cinematically show the story on Irene's Entropy on YouTube. There's no other Irene's Entropy. If you just type that into Google, it'll give you all the things.
Well, that's very true. It will. And it's just a joy to have you with me. If you were going to give advice to all of your listeners um, about reclaiming their voice, what would you say?
Never stop asking why.
Mm,
Never stop asking why. Always be curious. Be curious about yourself. Be curious about the world. Be curious about the people that you choose to form relationships with. Because we never stop learning and changing, and the ebbs and flows of life just create new curiosities for us to explore.
it's a beautiful note to end on. Thank you so much, Irene.
Thank you very much for your work. I appreciate you, Robin.
I appreciate you too. Thanks for joining me for today's episode. I hope you found it helpful and meaningful. If you want to listen to other episodes of the Gaslight Effect Podcast, you can find them at robinstern.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. And please leave a rating and a review. I also invite you to follow me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter. This podcast is produced by Mel Yellen, Mike Lenz, and me. All of my work is supported by Susan Pettit, Marcus Estevez, and Imaginarium. Also by Sally McCartan and Jackie Daniels. I'm so grateful to have many people supporting me, and especially grateful for all of you, my listeners.